like me.
Well, the biggest thing, one thing I think everybody needs to have is a situation where they've went from not being good at something to being good at something as an adult too.
Yeah.
Because when it happens when we're younger, we take that learning process for granted. But when it happens when we're older, we can use that as a reference point. And for me, that was with track, where I was doing it one way and I was just muscling through and I got decent results. But when I learned how to actually jump at full speed, my gains were way better and everything just felt easier. And so it's one of those things where if you go to the wrong coach, they'll just be like, yeah, just jump faster, jump harder. Yeah. But when I didn't take that as gold, for something in me was like, no, there's some people that can figure it out. And when I had that moment where I was like, oh, I made these adjustments, I changed the way that my body was moving, changed my behavior, it became easy. And I was like, oh, so there are some people that are mindful and intentional about how they're approaching something. And when they do find that one thing, they take off and they understand.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yo.
Another week.
Welcome back, y'all.
Good. Week.
What's good?
We just had a very large deployment go out.
I know,
Changing the fabric of reality.
The fabric of reality. We're changing it all.
But no, I do want to talk a little bit about it because it's live on the website right now.
Yeah.
Constance.com. If you guys are out there and you guys are interested, check it out. Try as guest.
Try
everything as guest.
Yep. We opened up some of our guest features, some of our AI features with the guest features. Although once you create an account, you immediately get way more functionality.
Oh,
you can create an assistant. You can leverage some of the agent functionality. And then if you want to upgrade even further, we have we remove all of the limits and then we really lean in, mostly just to cover our costs and stuff like that. We have to make sure that we do that. So that's why there's that price point. But then obviously I think all of our technology is in service to the mission of helping people leverage their creativity to pursue entrepreneurship. And so we also have exclusive one-on-one workings, and that's a whole, but that's a VIP lane, you know. It's not for everybody, but we do want to make the things that we're doing accessible to the people that are interested. So
that was a big thing, lowering the friction, right? So that even if you are trying to sell on our platform, there is no friction for somebody buying.
Yeah.
You know, you can get your stuff out to anybody and everybody. Just send them the link.
Yeah.
So check that out. I think we're super proud of it, and we'll be pushing it out on our socials very shortly.
Yeah, well, and iterating over it, because that's
exactly
a big part of development. And where we started is not where we are right now, and where we'll be in the next week, month, year is not where we are right now. And so it's just the continuous growth, the continuous development of things, and that's a big part. Another thing is that the people that we're working with, or the people that use our platform, have the most influence on it right now.
Yes.
So obviously we use it the most now, so we have the most influence over it. But people that we're working with, if they're like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? That's a benefit that you get from being one of the earlier adopters, is you have the voice on a platform that you just don't have on other platforms. So
very true. And then you said the iterating, the growing, also getting the feedback from the community is how we learn.
Yeah.
And how we can get better.
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like we do really well, is looking for things to learn, or even just learning without the intention of trying to learn something. But the situations that we put ourselves in just give us the opportunities to learn more.
Okay, go on that.
I think I think it's super important that not only as you're navigating through things, especially in your job or in a startup like what we have, that you are intentional about being open to learning new things.
Okay.
But also having a mindset where your brain just starts to, and maybe this is done through practice, but my brain right now, I just start learning things as I'm going. My brain's just open to the idea that I can get new information in, and that new information can then help me make more decisions.
It's so interesting because the idea of iterating in technology is based around the idea of learning. It's not like you're just doing it over and over and over again mindlessly, we're going to iterate and iterate. It's we're doing it over and over again to change our behavior for better results.
And you love that definition of learning.
I love that. Well, I got it from Charlie Munger,
Yep.
who RIP was Warren Buffett's partner at
BFF.
Berkshire, and that's like the only real way to measure it. I think that there's this whole dynamic of psychology where it's all in the mind, and so when you talk about learning, it's just evaluating how it's affecting our mind. Do we understand this thing more or less? But I think there's a whole behavior aspect of it that is important too. Is, okay, you understand, I understand, does that change in our actions? Because if it doesn't, then we get into situations where it's like, okay, when will this person ever learn?
Yeah, I studied this, but I didn't learn it.
Yeah, yeah. And those are two different things.
Yes.
And so I think with what we're talking about in being, so, okay, let's take a step back. A couple months ago now, maybe last year, Paul Graham put out an essay that talked about founder mode.
That's true, he did.
And what was the other one? Founder mode versus
manager mode.
Manager mode. And I don't remember the specifics right now, but do you have a good recollection that you could?
Oh yeah, so people? Like builder or founder mode, right? You need large periods of time where you can lock in on a problem. For most programmers, what we have to do, right, is get into the code, figure out what's happening in all the different parts of the solution. And basically what you're doing is you're loading all of that context into your head, just like you would load context into an LLM. But loading that context takes time.
Yeah.
And so let's say I have a really tough problem. It might take me 4 or 5 hours to figure out and then code up a solution. If I am interrupted for, let's say, 15 minutes for a meeting within that 4-hour time span, more than likely I have to restart. or I have to context switch back and it's just not very effective, which could add more time to the task, right? And so if you're in this builder or founder mode, you're going to want a lot of time just blocked off to work. That's in comparison to manager mode, where the value that you're bringing to the company or the team is through organization, right? You are leading the team through meetings. You have a lot of buy-in that you need to get from a bunch of different stakeholders. And so your value is done through meetings. So you're pulling people away from their work to get alignment, to go through updates, stuff like that. And that's kind of like the manager mode, right? Where they're like, yep, my day is full of meetings, but they have to be respectful of the founder or the builders.
It's because like building versus management, yeah.
Exactly. You can't have both at the same time, otherwise nothing gets done. And so
priority shift.
Yeah, and so what he was talking about was like scheduling your day. I think what he does is like from a very early time in the morning to like 1 or 2, I think it's builder mode, and then he switches into manager mode to like once everyone's in the office and they kind of like got a grasp on the day, then he starts doing his meetings. I think is how he laid it out. But yeah, just the comparison of like the two types of people in most organizations that add value in the way they do that.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to highlight. Paul Graham is, for people that aren't aware, he was the person who founded Y Combinator, which is a very prestigious startup accelerator over in Silicon Valley. It's responsible for being the early investors of very well-known companies, Stripe, DoorDash, Facebook, I believe,
Dropbox,
the list goes
Uber,
on, Airbnb. So it's at the heart of so much technology. But he often writes these essays where he talks about things that he's learned and these different insights that he's gotten from being on the ground with a lot of these companies. Reddit's another one of them.
Big one.
But going back to the whole founder mode, the thing that I was thinking about earlier this week is how much founder mode could be thought of as a learning mode, especially through the lens of changing behavior and dedicating time for that. I think a big thing that we do as programmers, a big thing that we do is we operate with our logic. And that comes in the form of code, in the forms of programs. And a program can be just thought of as a set of instructions or commands on instructions is a better word for like what's supposed to happen, what the machine is supposed to do. Another like clarifying example is when you look at like an event. an event usually has a program. First we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And so it's just a very reduced version of that.
It's exactly that, just in computer code.
Exactly.
It's exactly that. Yeah. It's just, oh, now the computer can understand and then do those things.
Exactly. And so when the program is off, then we have to come in and we're debugging. We have to come in, evaluate what the program is, and then set a new agenda, set a new program for the machine to follow. If we're looking at this analogy of an event, if say it starts raining and we didn't plan for rain and we have an outdoor event, well, if somebody's coming in, they need to be able to lock in and get context of everything that they have like access to. Maybe it's another venue, et cetera, and then be able to figure that out. And so that's probably the best way that I could articulate it to somebody who's not in the code. But just founder mode in general, and the reason why I think about it as learning mode is a lot of that learning part is the downloading the context. So that way we can make a calculated change in behavior to get the outcome that we want.
100%. And I think the analogy goes beyond just like code, right? Like the same thing would happen if you're putting shingles on a roof and someone's like, hey man, I need you to get off the roof and have a quick 15-minute meeting.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, like I know where I left off, but now you're interrupting this building mode where I'm going to have to go back and say, okay, where was I at? Okay,
what was I doing?
And with like, that, you can probably jump back in a little bit quicker, but it's still the same concept of like, okay, you're interrupting things to then switch context.
It's almost like if you leave the office and you put it in situations like that, it sounds so ridiculous, but there's so many parallels there. It's like, well, I just think we should meet about this shingle that we have to replace. And because are we sure that we want to put it there? And then someone's like, well, we need to involve the finance department because we can't just go up there and put shingles without evaluating the cost. And then somebody's like, well, we got to call legal because if we put that shingle up there, it is of a different brand, then we could get in some real trouble. And so 7 months later, we've now replaced this one shingle and you can get back to it.
Exactly. No, I mean, there is benefits to both sides.
Yeah.
But looking at the building mode as like learning mode, I think there's a lot more to be said around like, okay, if you're doing stuff probably by yourself, mostly, you're going to get the most return there by increasing your aptitude for whatever you're working on.
Yeah.
Increasing your knowledge base, your domain expertise, and getting that lived experience that should help you then, make the next decision with even more confidence. And that kind of learning, I don't know if you can really get that in a meeting. Yeah.
Well, a big part about learning, man, is, to me, learning is just, it's innate to who we are.
Hopefully. Let's hope, because I feel like I've met some people that it's not innate to who they are.
Well, learning is innate to who we are, but I think there's so much confusion around some of the stuff, in the sense that when we were in school, learning always felt, especially if it wasn't presented to you in the right way, it could end up feeling like a burden,
a chore. Yeah.
And something you have to do that you don't really want to do. Being young, we're still trying to parse out what it means to be a person.
Yeah.
And so it gets confusing because we associate the feeling of maybe having a bad teacher
with learning,
with the actual aspect of learning. And that whole idea where it's like, oh, you can learn, and what that actually feels like is something that I don't know if it's immediately obvious. Like they say, especially the liberal arts school, you go to a liberal arts school so you can learn how to learn. But if you have no basis of what learning means, then all of the things that you learn aren't going to be rooted or anchored to anything tangible. And so you might end up with like the wrong idea of what it actually means to be able to learn how to learn.
I actually haven't heard that from a liberal arts perspective, but like going through computer science track, like that was everything they were teaching us. It's like, as an engineer, you need to know how to get in front of any problem, figure it out, and then solve it. And so part of that process is learning.
Yeah, it's like applied learning in a real situation with a real world context. From the liberal arts perspective, because I went to Grand Valley, which is a liberal arts school.
Yep.
It was very much learn how to learn.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, but it wasn't like conveyed to everybody.
And I think also like that doesn't click for a lot of people until they get to college.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that I remember in like middle school where I would come home and play maybe some video games and maybe a new map would come out. I would spend hours learning that map, but I would spend 10 minutes on my homework.
Yeah.
It's because obviously, like, and I learned this later in life, it's like, oh, I was just passionate about that.
Yeah.
And so if you're passionate about that, it almost doesn't feel like that whole chore we were talking about. It's like, no, I want to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there is that innate in everybody. Like, if you are passionate about something, you want to learn more about it.
You're willing to learn more about it. Because I think changing behavior is not always fun. It can be fun. And when it is fun, I think that's where the height of it is. But let me rephrase that. Not fun, but more engaging. Because fun requires a level of challenge, but also a level of results and accomplishment.
Sure.
And so that fun dynamic of it needs to be present to like really experience learning. And I think it also has to be called out for that, because if you're passionate about something and you learn and you learn and you learn, then you're like, okay, maybe you just like, I'm good at this, right?
Sure.
And then, but you think it's innate because it might have happened early and it didn't really get called out as learning. But then the thing that's bad about that is that you can get in a situation where you don't realize that you can apply that same mindset to things that you're less passionate about, but are still important for whatever reason.
And applying it in a way that the same structure or the same format that got you to learn that other thing really easily is the same thing you could apply to those other things, right? Like, okay, if I'm going to spend a large amount of time doing something I'm not passionate about, finding those tips and tricks, like how I learned specifically, I feel it go a long way, because it goes back to like, okay, this doesn't feel like a chore. This doesn't feel like homework.
You said tips and tricks.
Yeah. I like to, when I'm learning something that I'm really not passionate about, I always give myself a goal. And sometimes that goal is within the thing I'm learning, like, hey, I just need to get to this next checkpoint. Sometimes that goal is not. Sometimes that goal is like, hey, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes, focus, and then I'm going to go take a walk. And I'm just like, I'm pumped about that walk the whole time, or I'm pumped about, going outside to touch grass, to the point where I forget that, okay, I'm like, doing this thing I'm not super happy about.
That's okay. That's interesting. You said go outside, touch grass. One thing that I think people vastly underestimate
Touching grass?
Is touching grass. It's touching grass, yes. Is vastly underestimate. And, oh man, dude. Okay, I'll shelve that. Barbara Oakley is somebody that we need the name that we need to revisit. If not this episode, a later episode.
Sure.
She's a learning researcher. But one thing that people vastly underestimate is that our brains are still working and figuring things out when we're not doing the task at hand. And that's super critical, because people think that, I've thought this before, it's just learning only happens when you're working on the thing in the moment, and if you step away, you're not learning. But learning is also, we're using the definition of changing behavior, part of it is you need context. You need to learn something, take a step away, figure out how what you just learned fits with other things in your life, how it relates, how it's the same, how it's different, and all of that helps with the actual learning process. But another thing is that the brain is also just working out in the background. Like, we're more than just our conscious awareness. We're like a full system. And we're not aware of all of the minute details. You might be sitting down, you don't realize the contact of your butt on the seat or the position of your legs. Like, your body's always kind of figuring out how to adapt to the environment at hand.
100%.
And so with like taking breaks and stuff like that, that's super important, because it provides context, and it also allows for the body to not be micromanaged. Like, we can micromanage our own learning process to the point where it hurts the development process.
I think some people do really well with like a really strict guideline or really strict, ways of doing their things. I know a couple people in college that had like very strict rituals around learning. Or maybe it was just studying. But like the ritual would be, something like, hey, we're all gonna go out and get coffee, then we're gonna come back and I have this specific candle I'm gonna light, and then I'm gonna make sure that I spend, for as long as that candle burns, studying. And there was like a ritual that some people would practice, just because when they did these certain things, when they started like, okay, I'm gonna go get coffee, on the way back from coffee, the brain started to settle. And it was just like, okay, I'm going into learning mode, or basically studying mode. And so I think also like a big part of that is like finding out what works for you, because I don't think there's like a broad brush that we could paint that's just like, yep, this is how everybody learns.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but I will pause for a second, because I think that there are things that do work better than others. Like, there's things like spaced repetition that play to the
don't be watching Netflix while you're trying to learn something. Like, obviously,
like focusing and things like that. And I think the ritual part of it is really good because it can put you in that space. The thing that I'm getting at with being able to take away and let your brain work and not micromanaging it is, there are, using people as dynamic, there are managers who are very good at blocking off time, falling into rituals, so that way everybody knows what they need to do to get a specific task done, or what the North Star is, and they tell people what to do and they're clear about that. Then there are other people that always tell people how to do things, and they hover over the person's shoulder, and they become more of a nuisance than an actual aid to the person accomplishing things, learning, growing. And that's what I mean by micromanaging. Like, we can micromanage our own mind. Our mind can deliver us answers if we let it. But if we don't, then sure, we might be able to get a result, but it might not be the optimal result. It might not be the best result. Like,
that's interesting, because I feel like I have the same idea for like managing teams. When you lead teams, that aspect of like, how can we get the most out of the time that we have, and what rituals do I want to set, and how predictable do I want to be? When I look back at some of our experience and just other experiences I've had, the leaders that set the most predictable patterns, I feel like we got the most done with. Right, where it's like, hey, no matter what's happening, we're all gonna have, like, let's say a morning stand-up, and then I don't expect to hear from you until, let's say, 1 or 2 o'clock. Like, that's great, because now I know, okay, from like, unless I did something on my schedule, on my time, from 9 to 1, I have free, open, I can do what I want. Versus I've had other leaders who they'll be like, like, there's rituals, but like, don't be weird if I call you about like some fire alarm that's happening.
And it happens like, all the time, and it's not an actual thing where, it's like there's a balance between structure and then like freedom and that open space to do what you need to do. And
that like okay, fire alarm, like hop off whatever you're doing, come over here and do this, and it's not like that big of a deal. That to me is like that micromanaging. And we could do that with our own selves too. That's the biggest part, is like, we do that with our own selves. And that's a huge part about learning. Another thing that's really interesting with learning is you can learn so much by teaching. That's a great one. I like doing that stuff for sure. Like, because then it kind of tests me. Like, hey, do I actually know this? And if I do know this, how would I verbalize that I know this?
And instruct somebody else to do that. And you learn so much because you're, like you said, you're forced to go through those questions because you know that your idea or methodology is being tested. And another thing too is, we do things and we don't know how we do things. This kind of plays into the last point about not micromanaging our mind. And that's when we get into overthinking, and it's like, okay, just go out there and do it. You've done this enough. You have to have confidence that you've done that, like that you've learned what you've learned. But to the whole teaching aspect of it is, when you communicate, it's involving other people, and it provides more context on how I should act in this given situation versus, and another thing too is, we have blinders on for ourselves sometimes. When we express things, we realize how little we actually know about the things that we're doing.
Like when you vocalize that to somebody else, you're saying?
Or you try to, and you're like, oh, I intuitively understood it, but when I try to communicate it, it's slightly different. Like, for instance, somebody might be like, nah, man, I just go up and I dunk the basketball. It's like, yeah, but like, how are you doing that? And people are doing things differently on a micro level. It's just like the nature of how we are. It's like, we are complex systems, and so there's so much going on that we can't be consciously aware of all of the things that we do. They even talk about the learning processes going from, there's like 4 stages of learning, where you don't know what you're doing, and then eventually you start to know what you're doing, but you're not like good at what you're doing. It's like conscious, there's specific labels for this, but eventually the goal is unconscious competence.
Ooh, okay, where you could just do it.
And you're not even thinking about it.
Second nature.
It's like when we speak our native tongue.
Oh,
It took us a while to learn that, right? Kids
I
were
still
just
don't really know
they're
it.
babbling, but eventually we know enough where we're like, okay, I can kind of communicate. And then you're like, you're not even thinking, you're just thinking about the idea, and then the language just follows.
Right, right. Which, yeah, that's actually a really good example because I was thinking like, I'd love to learn how to dunk a basketball, but if I could dunk a basketball, even trying to explain somebody,
Yeah.
like, because I would just be like, yeah, just jump,
Yeah.
which
just jump.
obviously isn't going to be helpful
Just go out
for
there and
somebody
jump.
like me.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing, one thing I think everybody needs to have is a situation where they've went from not being good at something to being good at something as an adult too.
Yeah, yeah,
Because when it happens when we're younger, we take that learning process for granted. But when it happens when we're older, we can use that as a reference point. And for me, that was with track, where
Okay.
I was doing it one way and I was just muscling through and I got decent results. But when I learned how to actually jump at full speed, my gains were way better and everything just felt easier. And so
Interesting.
it's one of those things where if you go to the wrong coach, they'll just be like, yeah, just jump, just jump, just jump faster, jump harder.
Yeah.
But when I didn't take that as gold, for something in me was like, no, there's some people that can figure it out. And when I had that moment where I was like, oh, I made these adjustments, I changed the way that my body was moving, changed my behavior, it became easy. And I was like, oh, so there are some people that are mindful
Yeah.
and intentional about how they're approaching something. And when they do find that one thing, they take off and they understand.
Yeah, yeah, that's and then making sure that you don't just let that moment pass you by and you start using it as a reference point
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, wow, I did learn something,
Yeah,
and that learning changed your behavior.
yeah,
That is super important.
yeah. I'm stand for Michael Jordan's basketball career and
Okay.
Tiger Woods as well. His career was
Great
just
career,
prolific. I've been reading Shoe Dog it's Phil Knight's memoir
Okay.
on when he was at Nike, and he develops good relationships with Michael Jordan and both Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan are consummate learners. They are craftsmen and they're nerds about what they're doing, and they're trying to be able to respond and act in all of these specific contexts and understand what they need to do in those situations. So they're practicing everything. I mean, that's the basis of skill.
Yeah.
Skill and training is the formula for learning. And so that's a real tangible example of people where I'm like, that's why they're good.
We'll have to do another episode on Phil Knight because a very interesting person and story.
Yeah, I mean, he was a runner at Oregon, or did he go to Oregon, or was it before that? He ran in college, and so he was an athlete. But there's so many things that I'm discovering when I'm listening to this book. I'm listening to it on
Oh, nice.
on audio tape, and there's so much there, not only in like the sports space, but just in business and then in marketing. Like Nike's great at marketing. That was something that was learned, and how they learned that is something that we're definitely gonna have to go in and dive in.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like the logo and everything like that, and then also like his.
he didn't even necessarily like the logo at first. He was like, I'm not a
Really?
big fan of it, but I think it'll grow on me.
And it did.
Yeah.
It grown everybody.
And then the company was actually called Blue Ribbon before it was called Nike.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
And
That and the slogan.
yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so simple, but it's backed by such a real cause. Steve Jobs even pointed to them when Steve Jobs went back into when he went back to Apple.
Mhm.
He talked about values and wanting to make it clear what the values were for Apple. He was like, we're doing a lot of things, but ultimately people care about what we care about. They want to know what we care about.
Yeah.
And he pointed to Nike as being a company that sold a commodity, shoes, and turned it into something that was meaningful to people by tying it to identity, and that's such a powerful. Maybe we talk about that in Super Secret.
I think we will. I think we absolutely will.
Super Secret.
Yeah. But on this learning topic,
Yeah.
something that nobody should ever take for granted is the ability to learn and the fact that you can learn just about anything you put your mind to.
Yeah.
That's something too that I feel like is really downplayed. Like people, just I feel like have a mental block sometimes when it comes to stuff that's like really hard. For example, like my grandparents trying to learn technology. They just don't. They just don't have. I don't know if it's like a passion to learn it or they just don't care to learn it. But
there's probably hints of that.
I just feel like it would make their lives so much easier.
Yeah.
To learn these things. So
like I've been around. I'm cool.
I just hope that like as we get older, that I'm always gonna have that aptitude for learning.
Yeah.
And that eagerness for it, because I just feel like that's what gives you those outsized returns in life.
Well, what's also really interesting with learning is the world reveals more to you the more curious you become about it.
Yes.
And so every time you learn something, you realize that there's more to learn.
Exactly.
And that you're never going to learn everything in one lifetime. And so then it becomes more of an issue about like prioritizing what you want to learn versus what you can put on the back burner. But then there's the aspect of then coming up with different strategies for learning. Like one thing that I think is really dope for me is through my strategies for learning is just making sure that I have benchmarks for when I'm getting better, but then also being aware of how I'm learning in other areas. So I love playing music, and what's the coolest thing is going from having my fingers be all like dumb on a guitar or like a piano, and then getting better at it and having music come out.
I think there's a lot of parallels out to like natural language.
Yeah, exactly.
Stumbling over a word and then being like, oh yeah, eloquently saying something.
And what's so dope is like, especially in a space like business or in being a founder where it's less clear what the barometer is and how we're growing, especially like early on, is when I look at some of the other things that I do that I don't spend as much time in. I mean, this is like the thing that I'm spending the most time in, right?
Yeah.
But I'm seeing it and I'm like, I'm like, might pick up a guitar after a couple of days and I'll be like, oh, that can play this better.
Yeah.
But it's so tangible and it's real where I'm like, okay, I got better at here. Then I start thinking back to business and I'm like, oh, but we did improve here and that is better. We're not thinking about that anymore. We're still perpetually learning. So we're always in that place where we're kind of seeing progress, but it's kind of just out of grasp until we learn something else and then we can adjust and reach it and now it's in grasp. But it's perpetual all the time. And so there's always going to be a feeling of I don't want to say angst, because I think that's just the feeling. It can be relabeled.
Yep.
But it's that feeling of like, okay, we're not quite there yet, but we're making progress. We're not quite there yet, but we're making progress. Then you grow into bigger problems that you then go in and seek out and find. So yeah, man, learning is it's a powerful exercise, and it's something that I think separates us from everything else on earth right now, is that ability to just learn intuitively.
Oh, absolutely. I think this was a great episode on learning.
Yeah, man,
Honestly.
I love it.
Awesome.
Founder mode, learning mode.
We'll see you next
I'll
week.
holla at y'all. Peace.